Hello everyone, welcome back to the series. Now before we get started today, I want to take a moment and address a request that was made by one of my patrons. Pavel here says, don't forget to ask for likes and comments under the video, as it's helpful for the algorithms of YouTube, because he's sad to see such a great work stayed tucked in a tight corner. Now, first of all, thank you Pavel for those words, that means a lot. And secondly, come on guys, let's not make Pavel sad. Can we agree on that? If you've been enjoying the series and been finding it helpful, please do consider leaving a like below and voice your opinion, your support, or your questions in the comments down below. It only takes you a moment, but it does make a world of difference for this channel, and it'll help it reach more people. That said, I also want to take a moment and thank all of my patrons for their support. As you know, this is a very large and complicated series, and it takes a lot of time and preparation behind the scenes. With my other responsibilities, that can be pretty difficult to push out content every week, but your support makes it a lot easier and it helps me to stay motivated. So to all of you supporting this project, I want you to know I appreciate that. Now, on to the video, because we have a lot to tackle. So what we're doing in this episode today is we are getting into a topic for history. Now, not like US history or world history, but history states for a visual novel, where you can log everything that has happened and then go back and view it at a later time. You can literally reverse and go look at scenes and just dialogue and everything that has happened up to the point that you are at in the series. We're calling this a history system. So what this history system will do for us is we need to generate what I'm going to call a history state. And a history state is basically a snapshot at any point in time in our visual novel. So the state will capture the dialogue, the speaker, all the configurations of the text on the screen at this time. It'll capture all of the characters, all of their configurations. It'll capture the backgrounds, the videos. It'll capture the music. And it'll store all of that in some kind of cached data container. And then all of these history states, each time the player clicks and new text is generated on screen, a new history state is created. And that will allow us to add all of these to a list. And then at any point in the time, say you hit the left arrow key or something, some kind of key that you decide, you can go backwards, starting at the very end where you are, working all the way back to where you first started, and you can look at all the states. We'll be able to put this in a log where you can read down through the log and just see all the dialogue. But we'll also have it where as you press the keys, then you'll bring back the audio, you'll bring back the characters, their positions, their expressions, the backgrounds, and everything. And you can literally go back and re-visualize what you've already seen. Now, as you can imagine, that is a fairly complex system. It's not that bad, but it does take a little time. And just as I had thought when I was planning all this out, this was going to be a pain in the butt to set up, which it was. Just figuring out how everything was going to link together and do it in a clean way. So that is not something that you guys have to worry about because I've already gone into the background and mapped it all out, so now we just need to follow along. But there are a couple things that we need to take care of. So first of all, the way that we had set up our characters, we're going to do something real quick that will be much more friendly to our history system when it comes to reloading character expressions, particularly for sprite characters. If you're using Model 3D or Live 2D characters, this isn't going to apply to you so much, but if you're using sprite characters or sprite sheet characters, then this will be pretty important. So if we just go in and we look, let's say I'm going to go to my resources and check out Stella. So Stella has all these different images. And we just call the name of an image with set sprite or transition sprite, and we can load up that sprite. No big deal. And of course, for your characters, maybe you'll have different sprites for different outfits. And those outfits will either be in a different sprite sheet or in a different folder, and you pass in the paths to those folders. Now, the way that we're running set sprite and get sprite and all of that, it's looking based on off of the path that you provide. And if we were going to log this into a history state, we can't save something like a sprite. We can't save audio, we can't save a background, and you're like, wait a second, did you just say that's what we were going to be saving? Well, yes. We can't actually save these items themselves, but what we can save is a reference to them, specifically a string representing the path. If you'll remember back when we were creating the graphic panels, then we were giving a parameter that would also take a file path for the images that we were loading. That's the file path we're going to be saving in the history state. So when a history state is reloaded, it looks at that path and it makes sure that that item is set on screen. Now we are going to use a cache for that, so it's not going to be reloading things constantly and drawing unnecessary memory, but it does need a path to make sure that it has the right items. And so if, let's say we have a character who is spawned on screen, and we did not call set expression or set sprite, we're just using the defaults. If we save that state, it's going to save with an empty path. Unless we go in and we manually define it, but then we have to manually define it for every single character in every single case that this might occur. And you can very easily miss that. So the way that we're going to handle that is we're going to introduce a new way of actually loading the sprites for our characters. This will replace the current method, which is why I say it's for the history states. If you're not including history states, you can blow past this video, and you can blow past this episode, actually, because this is all about history states. But if you are using history states, then I would advise you to follow along here and just follow with me as we redo this set sprite and get sprite function. We set it up like that initially because not everyone will use this, but I have a feeling most people will, so let's go ahead and see how we can take care of this. If you look at your character configuration asset with me, you've got a list of all your characters. And if we look in Stella, we can see we've got all the items that are associated to her and the configuration items there. Now, this is where we're actually going to be setting up our sprites. So we will have the sprites set up in the folder. Where is it? Stella Images. We'll have the sprites here, but we're going to link them to this configuration item. So we're going to make references to the sprites, and we're going to link them by name. So that sounds like a dictionary, doesn't it? But at default, you can't actually see a dictionary because it's not serializable. So if we use a dictionary here, it's just going to be invisible and we won't really be able to set the sprites. That is if we're using the default dictionary. However, if we go to Window and open up our package manager, then we can load up a package called Serialized Dictionary. This is a plugin by A Yellow Paper that you can get from the Unity Asset Store. It is free, so everyone can get it, and then you just want to update and import that into your project. So let's go ahead and import this. I don't need the samples, so I'm going to come down, deselect that, and go ahead and import that into my project. Once that's imported, let's go to our core scripts and head to our scriptable objects and open up the character config scriptable object. This scriptable object has an array of character config data items, so let's control-click on that and go straight to our character config data. Now we can define a dictionary to hold all the sprites for our characters. This will be visible even if your character is a text character, Live 2D, or Model 3D. If you don't want it that way, we could implement a custom editor, but I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. That may be something we do later, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and add this in, and if it's not for our character, we just won't populate it. So let's make this a public serialized dictionary. And we're going to give it a string for the ID and a sprite for the value. So we will call this sprites and set that equal to a new serialized dictionary. Make sure this is from the yellowpaper.serialized collections. If it's not, then you might have issues. So we need to give this a header so that way we can give a title that will be visible inside of our inspector and we know what we're assigning. So inside of brackets, let's define what this is. Let's make it a serialized dictionary, and inside of parentheses, the title for our string is going to be the path or ID. Then we'll have a comma, and inside of quotes, then we'll put sprite. And now what you'll see in our configuration asset is we get a sprites dictionary here, which we can expand, and we have a path ID and a sprite. So if we add an item, then we can type in whatever the ID will be and give it a link to the sprite. So let's do that for Stella, or for your character, since you won't have Stella. Inside of characters, Stella, images, I would just make an ID for each one of her sprites, and then link up the sprite here. So if you have different outfits, you would just want to precede the sprite name by the outfit name and log it in here. Sure, things are easier When we use resources.load and we just specify the path, then we don't have to go through and set all of this. But if we're using history states, we just want to be safe and we want to avoid any scenario where we may forget to pass that in. So we'll be loading it from dictionary instead of relying on ourselves to manually feed it, because humans are prone to errors. Believe me, I do things like that all the time. So I think this is a fairly good idea. Now, my characters have no subfolders, and they only have one outfit, so I only need to do this for each one of these. It's all going to go in the same dictionary, but we'll just specify the outfits in the ID, and you'll be fine, because that's how we'll look up the sprites. So I've got my body poses for Stella here, and I've got them named the way I would like to look them up, and the link is the sprite here. And because that got old real quick, I went on to ChatGPT and gave it my request and had it generate a script that will automatically pull all of this for us. So if we come down to our testing scripts, let's make a new folder called editor, and in here I've got sprite loader editor. This will be available in the description for everyone. What this will do once it imports is click on tools here at the file menu, and we've got sprite loader. This will open up a little editor window where we can browse to a folder for our character. So I'm going to come to Stella, Resources, Characters, and go into Stella and select her Images folder, since that's where all the sprites are. We select, and then we go ahead and link our character configuration asset, and then a character name field will pop up. This has all the characters that are inside of our configuration asset. So I will choose Stella, and then we can load the sprites, but let's just go ahead and see it happen. So we'll come back to configuration, load configuration asset. We see Stella is completely empty here. So I will now load the sprites, and now we have all the sprites loaded with their names and the references to the actual sprites. If I look down here, you can see I have outfit 1, followed by 1.1, that is a subdirectory, and a sprite within that subdirectory, which links to this file, which is basically just one that's cloned that I wanted to use as an example. So that will find any sprites inside of the subfolders as well, and then you can use that for different outfits. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, since y'all have seen that example now, and I'm also going to go to the end here and just remove that out of the references. So now I have a lookup table of all the sprites for Stella. We can also do that for Raylene, so we'll browse, go to the main tab, inside of Resources, Characters, Raylene, Images, select, since she's a sprite sheet, go to link the character configuration asset, and choose Raylene as the character. And we see she has nothing over here yet, so let's load the sprites, and there we go. We have all the sprites from her sprite sheet asset. This, of course, would take in any other sprite sheet assets in different folders as well. And I did the same thing for my generic character as well. To make use of this script, what we need is to get the original character configuration item. That way we can edit the dictionary directly. If we just grab the config, then we're going to, by default, grab a copy and we won't be changing anything. So what we need is to just tack on a boolean called safe, which will equal true by default. And then let's check. If safe, then we will return a copy. If not, then we will return the data itself and modify the original. So whenever we load the character configuration inside of the visual novel, it's going to be safe and we're going to be editing a copy, but for this little helper script, we'll go ahead and say it's unsafe, so we grab the original and we edit the data directly. Now, with all that out of the way, it's time to change how our characters get their sprites. So let's go to our scripts and into the characters folder, into character types, and where we have character sprite, this is what we want to change. Our character sprite has two functions, set sprite and get sprite. Set sprite is actually fine, so we'll leave that alone. The only thing we need to change is get sprite. So instead of loading from resources, what we can do to be safe is we can load directly from the dictionary assigned to our character. Now, so I can use it both ways if I so choose. I'm not going to remove anything here. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new section up here. So we're going to check if config.sprites.count is greater than 0, then we're going to try to grab it. So we're just going to see if we have it. If config.sprites.tryGetValue, we're going to try to get it by the sprite name that is passed in. and we're going to cast it out to a sprite called Sprite. Now, if that is true, we will go ahead and return the sprite. If we do not have anything listed in our config or we can't match it, then we'll go ahead and run through resources, but this should go ahead and take care of it right here. So we could go ahead and remove that, and you can if you want to, but just in case I want to refer to that in the future, I'm going to leave it in for myself. Really, this is all you need if we're using this new dictionary style. The way we can make sure this still works is we can load a chapter file and tell Stella to set her expression on the first layer to the expression called for, and on the first layer, or really the second, happy for. And where we were loading these from resources, as long as we match the ID, which is for, and that links up to this body, and then happy for, which is right here, which links up to this expression, we should go ahead and see it complete correctly. Which it does. Let's try it on Raylene. I'm going to set her body to A1 and her expression to A guilty. So we'll go ahead and say Raylene. 0 will be A1 and her expression will be A guilty. And we can see it applies to Raylene as well. If I actually look at her body sprite, we can see A1 is assigned and her face sprite A guilty is assigned. So everything is working great with our dictionary. So like I said, when we do it this way, when it comes to history states, we don't have to worry about passing in paths. We can just have it save the IDs and we are good to go. Now, a little note on this. Because of the way that history states are going to work, we need to make sure that our sprites are named in a particular way. So everything I have here is fine, and probably everything you have is fine as well. Let me tell you what's not okay. Let's look at our configuration asset. We can see A1 is linked up with A1. Okay, that is fine. This is what we want. We want the ID to be basically the name of the sprite. If it's anything other than that, we're going to have a lookup issue. So A2 is A2. Now, when we start getting into different sprite sheets, if we have default, let's say we had, let me just duplicate this. Let's say we have the default sprite sheet, and then we have outfit 1. And I'm going to run that tool again. So sprite loader, and I'm going to browse to Raylene's images, so resources, characters, Raylene images, select, and I'll link my character configuration asset, select Raylene, and load the sprites. Now, first off, let me dock this over here. You'll notice that I didn't actually get any new entries, because the items in the second list, well, they are actually named the same thing as the items in the first, which means if we enter keys and try to enter keys for the same ones, it's not going to work. It's going to see an entry already exists, and it's not going to update the sprite. Or actually, it's going to overwrite the sprite. So what we would do for each different outfit is we would have to name the sprites different things. So we would have to name the sprites according to their outfits or according to whatever folder they're in. Which means if I take outfit 1, go to sprite editor, and just pull this down here, then I would rename A1 to something like outfit 1, A1. Yes, a painstaking process, but you only do it once. And maybe you could even write a script to do it for you. And I would make sure that all of these are preceded with outfit 1. Why? So we'll be able to differentiate A1 from default between A1 and outfit 1. So all the sprites need to have different names, and those names will be added as different keys. So you can see in outfit 1, I have this sprite called outfit 1A1. So if I go ahead and load the sprites, then let's go back to our configuration asset and take a look here. So if we look at the very end, now I have outfit 1A1, which links outfit 1A1 here. And we go back to the beginning, A1 is linked to default A1. So just make sure your sprites have unique names for their outfits, that way they can be loaded correctly. And it's important that the ID equals the same thing as the sprite name, because that's how we're going to look them up in history states. History states will save the sprites based off of their name, and then when we reload the state, it's going to look them up based off of that name. So that needs to be the same. As long as we've got that, and all that's clear, we are ready to proceed to making these history states. See you guys in the next episode.